So we're not going to do the normal kind of message that we normally do, thus normal. We're going to try and engage in a bit of contemplation on Psalm 89:17 this morning, which simply reads the A part of that verse, "For you are the glory for their strength," speaking about God and his people. For you are the glory for their strength. Sometimes that's translated, you are the glory of their strength. It's the same thing. There's no difference really in the meaning. We're going to hone in on one way to perceive Jesus and ourselves together with him in this verse. And we're going to start by looking again at the word glory with which we are familiar. And God's glory in Scripture has to do with what is weighty and beautiful. Weighty and beautiful. By putting these two ideas together, Scripture tells us that glory is about beauty that is truly weighty, significant, and of consequence. Glory is about beauty that is truly weighty, significant, and of consequence. So when we're talking about God, as we are here in this verse, God's beauty is the splendor of his life of love. God's beauty is the splendor of his life of love between the Father and the Son in the Spirit. And so God's beautiful life of love is infinitely weighty, infinitely substantial, infinitely meaningful. It does not, indeed, it cannot fade. And this is why his life is eternal. It doesn't start out as eternal and then something else is added on to that eternity. What God is, who God is of such substance that that is his eternity. That makes sense so far? And what we then come to, of course, as we're saying, how do we see Jesus in this? Well, we see him very clearly because Jesus is the embodiment of God's weighty and beautiful communion of love. Jesus is the embodiment of God's weighty and beautiful communion of love. And this is why it is in Jesus that we behold or we encounter the glory of God. He is, as Hebrews 1:3 says, the brightness of God's glory and the express image of his person. And so we have no idea, apart from Jesus, what really is the glory of God. What we have in Jesus is the clear manifestation of the glory of God. And what we see then in Jesus is his beautiful life of love. That is so weighty, so full of meaning and consequence, that it cannot fade. Which is simply then to say there is nothing that is able to diminish it. It may diminish all else, but nothing can diminish it. And this is God's omnipotence. Strength. For you are the glory for his people's strength. What does it mean to say then that God is the glory for his people's strength? It simply means this, two lines. first line is this: God's life of love, present in Jesus, is the beauty that gives strength to his people. Now, I didn't define strength, did I? I came back and then skipped that. So let me go back to strength. That'll still be true, Rob. You don't have to scratch that. It's still true. All right, so strength here is about prevailing in war or struggle.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yep. Strength has the sense of prevailing in war or struggle against an enemy. Prevailing in war or struggle against an enemy. It's that kind of strength that we're talking about here, with that sort of focus to it. So now we come to that question. So what does it mean to say that God is the glory for his people's strength? First line, God's life of love, present in Jesus, is the beauty that gives God's people strength to prevail. Interesting thought. Say it again. God's life of love, present in Jesus, is the beauty that gives God's people strength to prevail. That's one of the things we'll be reflecting on in just a bit. Second line, God's life of love, present in Jesus, is the substance, the weightiness, the significance that gives God's people strength to prevail. God's life of love, present in Jesus, is the substance, the weightiness, the significance that gives God's people strength to prevail. Are there any questions about what we've just said in this perception? What we're perceiving in this way this morning?
I imagine all the people before wouldn't even, before Jesus, just knowing Psalm. Before Jesus came, it's like knowing that there's something weighty and beautiful. It's not just it's not just a spiritual relationship. There'll be something substantial and consequence, like something that is physically tangible, that has weight and meaning. And so it's like, I could imagine from their perspective, it's just a foretelling of that, and for thousands of years.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Brian. Good.
I did have one quick question.
Yep. I'm sorry, we've run out of questions. There was one, and you weren't first. You're still going? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Why is eternal always translated as age during instead of forever? Like even when it comes to like God's eternal, love or whatever, it's always age during.
Well, it is simply about an age, but the age, the word age, has characteristics to it, and so as you think about God's eternity, this is why we have to put glory into the equation, because the age that characterizes God's own life, because eternity isn't something apart from God. Eternity isn't the time he creates to live in, right? Yeah. Eternity is God's own time.
Okay.
And that time then is characterized by his glory, which is what makes it eternal.
I see. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So let's come to this first question for reflection. What does our scripture say gives us strength?
Jesus.
Jesus. What particularly about Jesus? Is it his fingernails?
Beauty.
No. His life of love, which is
Filled with glory.
Filled with glory, meaning it's beautiful and it's weighty. What an interesting thing to think about for us. That what gives us strength is beauty that is so weighty it cannot fade. And that it is God Himself, because it's not just anything we want to label as pretty, because remember, what's the difference between what's pretty and what's beautiful? What is beautiful?
Pretty doesn't have weight to it.
Pretty doesn't have weight to it. Exactly. What is beautiful is the manifestation of the good. Remember? So you can have something that's pretty, but it's not good. And you can be attracted to its prettiness, but it's a siren song calling you to the rocks. That's its appeal. It doesn't have real substance to it. It isn't weighty, as Judy was saying. And of course, then, whenever, and so understand what we're doing. We're reflecting on this. That's why we're doing this right now. This is part. Let me finish this out and then I'll come right to you. So as you would reflect on what it is that gives me strength, you'd think, well, it's beauty. Beauty is what actually gives me strength. I never really thought about it like that before. Right? I've thought about other things, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I also know then that wherever there's beauty, there's goodness that is of such weight it will not fade either. And so pretty can be there where there's no good, but beauty is there where there is good, because it is the radiance, the brilliance, the illumination of the good. It's good, shining, as it were. It is the attractiveness of the good. That's what we need. That's our strength. Brian.
And another key characteristic, because weighty keeps popping out to me, the word. It's like, well, that it won't fade. Like that is just something that which you can build a foundation on. True, and it's like taking that term. If we apply that to Jesus, then everything else is just kind of a subset of what we can still look at things as weighty. Like I understand that more, but it's like so anyway, that's all. Thank you.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This is what you would want to build your life on, isn't it? It's the parable that Jesus gives about, some people built on soil, sand, and they had no foundation. If you want a house to last, you have to build it on what has substance and isn't fading. The same thing is true for our lives. That's part of the reason that this is what is strength for us.
I find this so fascinating. I stumbled upon this YouTube video this morning by a historian that was looking into the ugliness of the Soviet Union, why their architecture and so many things were so ugly. And he was drilling down into why did Stalin order all the removal of church bells? And their scientists actually began to study that the larger, older bells that produces certain frequencies of sound, when these things would play, they would reverberate throughout the communities, and they would give people this sense of calm. And the thing that these beautiful church bells would do at an ontological level to your physiology, to yourself. And they're like, we can't have that. So war against God to purposefully establish atheism is they tried to remove anything that was beautiful, that was edifying, that the scientists could actually say this was objectively good for you. Anything that was beautiful, that was good, they would purposely remove. And they even had orders, start with the biggest bells first, because those were better than the smaller ones. Like they were so specific at attacking the beauty. And you're like, oh, aren't we that way as moderns?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And now we're in so many ways, we're so dead to even noticing what is objectively beautiful, because we've had this onslaught towards it in our culture for hundreds of years.
I mean, even how they built buildings. I mean, if you go back to the Soviets,
Yes.
how they're just stark and
Ugly.
very, not ugly,
Mhm.
but
Pretty
just very
interesting.
It's called brutalism.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are built before, though.
It is called that.
They aren't the construct of the communist power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. So when we need strength for what we're facing day by day, what's going to supply that strength is beauty. Beauty, of course, all things that are beautiful are rooted in the life of love that God is. All beauty points toward that life of love that God is. And so when we say, "Oh, Jesus, just give me strength," we're not asking if we understand what we're asking, and most of the time we don't when we ask for that. We're not asking to be supercharged, to be, the Energizer bunny that just runs around and does all this work. That's not what this strength is about. And we'll get to that again in just a moment. What we're asking for is a beauty that will empower us, that is present in Jesus as the manifestation of the life of God. That's what we're asking for. And it's because we don't understand what we're asking for that we so often miss the strength that God wants to give us as we live our everyday lives. Any other thoughts on that question?
Just never thought of beauty that way, really.
I keep thinking of that island. There's this concrete pillar that was built in the middle of the ocean, and I imagine that it's like, it's something truly strong that's can grab a hold of just like some idea or just some ritual that you had a spiritual feeling or what have you. Real.
Right. In the ocean that we live in,
Yeah.
we need that kind of thing, don't we?
Seriously.
Yes.
Well, when I hear the phrase, "Lord, give me strength," it's usually somebody who is dealing with a difficult person.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they're really asking is, "Lord, let me love them like you do."
Yes.
That's where the strength would be.
Yes. Exactly right. Exactly right. And we're going to be getting to that. Perfect segue. Perfect. For what do we need strength?
To prevail.
What is our strength supposed to be used for? To prevail in what way?
In war or struggle against the enemy.
Yes, we have an enemy that is tirelessly at work. And this doesn't mean that absolutely everything that we encounter that is opposition is a demon itself, but it does certainly mean that everything that opposes God has its source in the demonic. And so you don't have to be a demon in the moment to be oppressed by a culture that has been shaped by the demonic, right? We're constantly dealing with people who are so inhuman because they've been shaped by an inhuman culture. Our whole direction with increasing acceleration is the dehumanization of culture. So that, as I was just lamenting, and she wasn't interested, but she was kind and she was quiet, to Kara this morning, that I find it beyond my imagination to think that now people are going to depend on AI to write their emails for them. Because you don't know, almost cursed, you don't know what the heck you want to say. So you're going to let what is inhuman communicate what is human to another human. what in the world is that? You're giving up your humanity because you won't express yourself. This is not a good thing. But this is the bent. And that doesn't have to be a demon that comes to you in your email. But there is something demonic about a culture that would so dehumanize itself that you can't even have a person at a parking lot. I know, Jackie, I won't rant. But you can't even have a person at a parking lot to take your money for a ticket. You've got to get on some app in your phone, and then you've got to spend the time to enter the information. All you have to do in the old world, I know people who are listening, yes, I'm 700 years old.
It's actually easier to pay online if you already have that installed.
Yes, but not if you're at a parking garage that you have to now enter all your information to get it done. My only point is, what you're doing is you're taking what used to be an interaction between people and you are eliminating the relationship. And this just becomes something that you do on your own with technology. There's no humanity in it. Which also makes asking a question impossible, right? But all of that rant simply to say that when we are trying to prevail against the enemy, this includes our everyday life in ways that are just so enculturated that we need to be aware what is the battle we're facing. Right? So we're not just trying to prevail to get our way. That's not the prevailing that's being spoken of here. That's got to be in there as well. So, oh God, give me strength to prevail against this person who's not doing what I want them to do, and I can't manage their behavior the way I'd like to manage their behavior, to make things simpler and maybe even safer, but I just can't seem to manage them. They aren't serving me the way I need them to get what I want. So God, give me strength. Well, no, God, that's not the strength we're talking about. So what does it actually look like to prevail against the enemy? That's important. That's what the strength is. So what does it look like to prevail against the enemy?
In that particular situation that you just said, instead of you're asking strength from the Lord is to be able to love them the way Jesus would and allow that to show through and not be trying to control them or get your way, like that. Live as Jesus in you wants you to treat that person with respect or whatever.
Exactly right. Because to live our true humanity, to respond in such a way that it is the likeness of God. Because that's what we are as humans. And in order for humanity to prevail against the demonic, certainly the demonic beings, but also the demonic kind of culture that we would find ourselves in, is to be human. Because all of the demonic is to dehumanize us. To be human is to be the image of God that expresses that image in the likeness of God, in how we live. That's prevailing. We know this because this is what Jesus does. And he is our humanity. So prevailing is sharing in the beauty and substance of God's life of love so that we might be human. Sharing in the beauty and substance of God's life of love so that we prevail, so that we respond in love. This is what it looks like to prevail. Prevailing doesn't mean beating the enemy. This person in front of us, this government in front. We may lose that battle. We may lose public support. We may lose friendship. None of that is winning. Prevailing is displaying within us, manifesting in our response, likeness to God. That's prevailing. Not the consequences. That's prevailing. So in light of the previous two questions, what isn't your strength?
Getting your way.
Yeah. Yes, getting your way isn't the strength. What?
Yeah, being right.
Being right is not your strength. Which then would move on to say too, your capability is not your strength. How smart you are isn't your strength. It can serve your strength, but it isn't your strength. Which then leads to some very interesting things, doesn't it? Because if being right isn't my strength, what happens when I do something wrong? Not on purpose even. Haven't I blown it? Have you?
Not if you're living according to what Jesus has instructed you.
Yes.
It could be wrong by society or wrong by culture.
Or even wrong.
Okay.
Even wrong. Yes. You are not diminished if you're wrong. God's ways aren't defeated if you're wrong. Because God isn't depending on you to be right to get what he wants done. Okay? He's not. When you do wrong, or when you don't know enough to do what is right, that's not a fault. What if you put in the hands of a 4-year-old, a very important decision for which they simply don't have the mental capacity to understand what you're asking of them? But they do it as lovingly as they know how in the moment. So what are you going to do? They don't have the capacity. Sometimes we make deductions that are just wrong because we don't have all the information, or because we're very tired, or because we're stressed. That doesn't mean we're sinful in those moments. That doesn't mean the enemy wins in those moments. No, we lose the battle when we do not live in the likeness of Jesus. That's what it looks like to lose. God is not reduced to my success, which means he's not dependent on it for what he wants to get done. God is the creator. God is the one that is bringing all things into being. He does that with us, not because he needs us, but because that's the way he's chosen to work. And God isn't anxious about this. If God were anxious about this, then he's done something really dumb. To depend upon finite creatures that have to grow into knowledge, grow into wisdom, and they say, I'm going to depend on you to do the right thing every time. What a ridiculous God that would be. And yet that's the God we sometimes think we have. Well, you've blown it for God by what you did. Now God can't prevail.
How arrogant of us to think that way.
Isn't it, Kara? What a ridiculous assumption. We prevail by living out the likeness with the capacity that we have. And that's all that God wants for us. It's all that God, quote, obviously this isn't correct, needs from us. He doesn't need more. If God's life of love present in Jesus, the beauty of that life, is our strength, then my strength isn't feeling strong enough. I don't have to walk into any situation and think I've got this. I can walk into a situation and feel I don't have this at all. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not smart enough, strong enough to handle this in the way I'd like it to turn out. And none of that has to be alleviated for me to prevail.
Keep hearing Jesus saying, prevail with me.
Yes.
It's an invitation to prevail with him.
Yes. Yes. And prevailing isn't going to look like you win many times. You will be the one who apologizes, maybe when an apology isn't even exactly the right thing. It will look like you lost the argument a lot of times because you don't come back in ways that decimate the other person, or because you don't care to continue an argument because it is degenerating the relationship. And so you're just quiet. And everybody around thinks you've lost. Even the person you were trying to get to, show them they were wrong, they think they won too. That's called your cross.
Just like Jesus prevailed when they were accusing him and pulling his beard out and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, that's right.
Revile in return.
That's right. Notice Jesus did not out-argue his opponents on the cross. They mocked him, and he didn't put them in their place and show them how wrong they were. He forgave them. That's how he prevailed. Which lets you know that power over other people isn't your strength. And whenever we're seeking that power over others, that's not the strength we need to pursue. Now, sometimes you have to contain evil. Absolutely right. But you can contain evil in a way that only makes you evil. So how might you live out today's contemplation in your everyday life?
I think two things I'm hearing that are directly applicable to this is think about the things you're attempting to cultivate in your life, the things that are pretty but not beautiful. Take those to their logical end. I'll give you an example. I have been with some of these folks on YouTube that are some of the most well-read, brilliant, theologically amazing people on earth that engage in debates and arguments in YouTube videos. And I watch them and I think these are some of the most well-read, educated, thoughtful, brilliant people you're going to ever come across. And yet they are so ugly. And everything about them and how they treat others and the manifest their life is so ugly. It's so repulsive. And I think, okay, that's a great example that pursuit is not glorious. And the other thing that I think has been very helpful is to ask yourself the question, in my life and how I relate to others around, how does this make us more authentically human? What would make life better in that capacity, right? And how can I participate with God in that? It's really practical, and you can think about it in ways like, how do I do good, right? All those definitions. How do I freely participate? Someone should only do good to them here. That's helping them, make them a better version of themselves, making them more human, making myself more human in the process. The enemy hates that. That's bringing light to the darkness.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Don. Someone else.
Well, on your for fellow travelers of the journey, you talk about the kinds of thoughts, well, this guy that we nurture. If we're peaceful and calm, and then that's what our attention is toward, and that shapes our life, which in fact, whoever we're dealing with in our realm of influence, that's a way of prevailing as a global thing.
Think about the monks that are traveling, if you've been following them, that their realm of attitude, thoughts, I mean, they've been posting what they think and all of that, and it's just what she said. It's like they're manifesting calm and love in the midst of on, walking slowly, contemplating on God, and it amazes me just to see them do this, and their whole being is that love and calmness and giving.
Yes, and there's something going on even with the people who aren't directly in their presence, because they are human and they're doing something in what it means to be human. Yeah.
I
Brian?
was thinking Isaiah 40:31,
Mm-hmm.
for those who trust and wait on the Lord will find new vigor to overcome challenges, soaring like eagles and enduring without weariness. So yeah, done through Christ. But yeah,
Yes.
I keep thinking of that too.
Yes.
Because like, not always do I find strength, and some days I'm weak,
Yeah,
strength has to be renewed.
it does.
You know,
And that's why we have to continually open to the beautiful. It's not just another task. This is our strength. And for us to go throughout the day after day after day, without engaging what is beautiful is just nonsense. We don't recognize it as that. And we tend to structure our lives around what we can accomplish, thinking I don't have a need for the beautiful. But to prevail you do. To prevail you do. It's so helpful for us in this to recognize we don't have to feel strong to be strong. Because it's not how we feel, it's not the size of our muscles, it's God that provides the strength. You know, I watched a final thing here. I watched a news feed where someone had taken a video with their phone of a woman who was sitting on a bench in a park, and the guy sitting right next to her had her by the hair and was trying to get her to move off the bench, and she was holding on to the bench. And people were walking by doing nothing. And then these three guys in their 20s, early 20s, ran over there, stood in between the woman and this guy, and took care of business. Shall we just say? So she never felt their ability in herself. All she was aware of was, I don't have what it takes to handle this. Her strength came from what was not her, from outside of her. And when it came, she was trusting them to release her, not what she could do. We're so often looking at, what am I going to do? How do I feel? Do I feel capable? And all that other stuff. When really all we're called to do is see the beauty of Jesus. And if we can't even see him in that moment, we need to trust what we already know. He is the beautiful one. And the beauty that he is and is present is enough for me. I trust that. No matter how I feel, that's what I trust. And that's not anything you do. It's you're trusting him to be the strength. He is the beauty. The beauty of overcoming this person physically, or overcoming this person with my words, or getting this job done at this time instead of that time. None of that is your strength. Your strength is trusting the beauty of Jesus and his life of love. That's it. This is why Paul says in Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live how? By the faith of the Son of God. Not my faith in him, by the faith of the Son of God. Jesus has what we need. That's our trust. And if I'm not trusting how I feel instead of Jesus, boy, this really lets you know what you're trusting. I can trust he is all the beauty I need, and he is present. In just a few moments, we're going to be celebrating the life that we share with Jesus. Our participation in the life of love that God is. In just a few moments, we're going to be strengthened by the Jesus who is present in the bread and the cup. Reflect on that for just a moment, and then come and take communion.